And welcome back, Dragon Ballers, to another episode of Get the Mic, the only show where your host on the left, Owl,
And your host on the right, Brock.
dissect fiction for its mythological significance. In this episode, we're going to be continuing our delve into the General Blue saga of Dragon Ball, particularly focusing on the first pirate's trap and, let's say, the revelation of the treasure and all of that which that entails, let's say. I don't think there's any housekeeping stuff, so let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Mhm. The first thing we see is Goku and the crew arrive in the cave as they're being pursued by Blue. They discover that the pirate treasure is indeed here.
Right. As soon as they get down there and Goku hits the button and turns the lights on in the cave, they all have the realization that this must be the place that the treasure is, right?
Also, of course, it's Goku to turn the lights on, by the way.
What do you think that means necessarily? The enlightenment, or you could say the
Well, I
lighting of the
mean,
way.
it's Goku enacting that heroic spirit which brings order from chaos, right? Light from darkness, let's say, and it has to be Goku to do it because of his spirit. I think that's pretty much that. But I think that a little bit of that was last episode, right?
Right.
This is just kind of a recap, and also that Blue is pursuing them. We saw that last episode as well. And the name of the episode is The Pirate's Treasure, I believe, or The Trap is Sprung. I think that's the
Yeah.
English translation.
The trap is sprung. It's kind of weird. It's a strange name for it.
I like the Pirate's, not treasure, sorry, the Pirate's Trap. I said the Pirate's Treasure, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Pirate's Trap is what I should have said. What do you think about that? Because I think that the Pirate's Trap is more indicative about what we're going to see in this particular episode than the trap is sprung. Because it's not, it almost insinuates that Blue is springing the trap.
There's a weirdness to the idea that this is just the trap as well, because I don't think that there's necessarily a the trap. I think that there are traps in this place that they're going into, b- but that's not, and it's very similar in construction, let's say to Pilaf's traps, right? But this place isn't a trap, right? Where they're going is not a trap necessarily. But to specify that it's the pirates' traps that they're coming across as they go further down into this cave, I think is a bit more succinct for the themes of what we're going to be talking about for the next 3-4 episodes.
Right, and I think the pirate's traps is more accurate and precise
Hmm.
for this episode. But like we were saying, we did see them come out of their submarine. They've left that all behind. They're in the cave now and they're being pursued by Blue. Meanwhile, off in a distant land which we have not yet seen, Commander Red has commissioned a portrait, and he and Staff Officer Black are posing for the Goat Man, who is the artist who is drawing both of them. Meanwhile, a soldier comes in to inform Commander Red of the pirate treasure and how Blue has discovered the pirate treasure.
I
What?
like the painting that he does where we see this is, we see this in real life as well, but he's basically commissioned him to paint him in a to make him look larger than life. And so what he does is he paints Black down to be this squat sort of dwarfed figure, right? And inverts it so that even when he's standing, he's not as big as Red is sitting down.
Right, and it is an externalization of Red's idealized self versus his real self. And the, let's say, separation between those things is kind of foreshadowed here to be his undoing.
Hmm. It's definitely foreshadowed for the relationship between Red and Black, and then whenever Black sort of leans in and tries to look at the picture and talk to him, I think he tells Black, "I told you not to get close to me and not to talk close to me," or something
I
like that,
told you
right?
not to stand over me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like he's literally having to look up at him, and I think that's what pisses Red off, right?
Yeah, he
And
doesn't wanna be reminded of his, physical
but
status.
I do want to mention too, there is a common kind of theme between all these cutaways to the Red Ribbon Army headquarters, and all of them characterize and personify Commander Red. So we saw Red destroy Beauty in the search for his wish, right?
Mhm.
We've also seen him here diminish other spirits around him in order to appear taller or bigger amongst them. And all of these things will build up so that we see when the final confrontation between Red and Goku happens, it'll be all that much more poignant.
I also wanna point out here in this portrait, typically a portrait like this wouldn't include a second person, right? This would just be a likeness of Red and make that would make him look regal, make him look noble. But Red can't do that on his own, and so he necessarily needs to tear down the spirit of somebody else, even in a depiction of himself, so that he can appear as large as he thinks that he is.
Absolutely. Even though soldiers like General Blue envision the spirit of the Red Ribbon Army to already be larger than life by no comparison.
Well, thinking of General Blue as sort of a manifestation of that spirit, right? He's almost like an embodiment of that idealization of vanity. Um, we are being we're being shown a dichotomy between the two, between Red and Blue here, where Red, his ideal self is the way that Blue physically is.
Yes. And that's kind of what I meant when I was talking a few episodes ago that blue is the embodiment of everything the Red Ribbon Army really stands for.
Yeah, I think it's making a bit of a commentary on how whenever you have a rule by tyranny, the person at the top generally is small in spirit, right? They're typically somebody who is compensating for what they lack through that tyranny, and that's instantiated in what they do. And I think that Blue is the way that he is because that spirit actually creates that idealization, but it's not for you. You know, you create the parameters for that to exist exterior to you, but you can't have it.
And that's actually what Red would like from the Dragon Balls, as we'll see.
And we see that too. I think they do this again much later on. Is it Super? When we see that Frieza wants to get the balls and he wants to make himself taller. They're echoing this idea much, much later
Oh
on,
my god, that
but they
is
don't get
I
the
think
spirit
that's
of
is
it.
that the Broly movie?
Maybe it is.
It's
No, no,
something
no.
like
It's
that.
it's the resurrection of F, right? Whenever they first bring him back, and he's like,
No,
"I'm gonna
no,
get the
no,
Dragon
because he
Balls."
wants to come back to life.
I don't know. It's all nonsense to me, anyway.
Well, the reason he joins the Tournament of Power is so that he'll be able to live again, lose his halo, all that. But
Right,
let's
but
not get too far ahead of ourselves
well, I
because
also
super,
do
super.
wanna to
Oh,
to draw the line between the way that he is physically
whoa.
and the way that Pilaf is. You know, we're seeing this is a more serious version of that foolish adversarial spirit here where he's small, he wants to be bigger.
But that's the thing. Versus Pilaf, who wants to rule the world, he wants his spirit to be instantiated further throughout being,
Mhm.
which is kind of more admirable than Pilaf's amorphous goal of ruling the world, but less grandiose than what the Red Ribbon Army thinks his wish is, which is to rule the world under the auspices of the Red Ribbon Army.
I think that that's a good way to put it because Red is much more realistic in what his goal is, and he can specify it much more succinctly than say Pilaf could, and we see that here whenever he gets the report that they found the pirate's treasure, he doesn't have the same reaction to it that Blue does. Blue says, "Oh, this is a discovery that rivals the Dragon Balls." Red says, "That's nice. Make sure they still get the Dragon Ball."
Right, he does have that extra level of foresight, and I guess that's why he is Commander Red. So we get this glimpse into his character, just like another little piece of it, and we're going to continue to get those pieces as we go further in, well past Blue.
Hmm.
So then the next thing we see is that the Go crew has come across a room of booby traps, and having no recourse but to test them out, they find that upon hitting any of those little spots, they fire arrows or spears upon the wall to where those things are. Goku and Krillin can easily jump across, but Bluma unfortunately cannot. So Goku uses the power pole to help her cross, and meanwhile, Blue, thinking he's finally found a spot to capture the Goku, sends all of his men to go chase after them.
Ahead of himself.
Yes.
Do you think that there is necessarily a symbolic nature to this hallway where it's sort of a path that is treacherous to walk, but because of Goku's strength, you could say strength in character, he can circumvent that. He can skip over it. But it's not something that Bulma could do, and she needs to rely on Goku's ability to use the power pole to get across this path, this treacherous way of going.
Well, it is to say that the self-destructive path, and I think it's poignant to mention that this is a cave made by pirates, right? It
Hmm.
is and actually we don't ever find out, but there could be a pattern that you could walk across.
Sure.
But we don't find out because Goku and Krillin pretty much ignore that, and then they
We could say
get
they're
Bloomer
above
across.
walking the pirate's
But
path, right?
that's what I'm saying. Right. They're already above that spirit, so it's immaterial to them at that point. But it is a dangerous path to walk, and I think it is symbolic of that path by which someone would hoard and hide away their valuables in order in let's say they're stolen and unearned valuables.
Hmm. And you could say that walking that path would be very dangerous to someone with a character like Bulma because she clearly doesn't appreciate the things that she's
Well, I
inherited.
want to say not just valuables as in material, but
Right.
in order to be a pirate, you must be able to sacrifice your moral compass.
Hmm.
And so it is Goku and the ancestral force of the Noibo that is able to let Bluma across that way. And all of the other Red Ribbon soldiers, unfortunately, perish.
Well, they all fall to it, I think, for that very reason, because the mode of being that they're representing, or you could say what their purpose is here at the cave, is not good in the same sense as Goku and Bulma and Krillin. Now, Bulma kind of accepted from this because Bulma seems to just be this mirror of, uh, how would I say, immorality,
Hmm.
along with
In
the
a
crew.
way, in a way.
But of course, they fall to it because they immediately step right into the trap. That trap sort of being that destructive nature of walking the pirate's path, walking the path that is set before them to be perilous and fraught with pitfalls, you could say.
And just to extrapolate that further, it is basically a hallway of the adversarial spirit. You one must be able to endure that path and able to for them to be able to enjoy the riches of that mode of being. Whereas Goku and Krillin have already just been able to circumvent that and bring Bloomer across. Of course, none of these soldiers are able to have that high, even of a wicked spirit, but perhaps Blue does. Let's see what happens with Blue, shall we? So the next thing we see is, ooh, let me see, this one. So Blue finds an alternative path that leads to an underground pool and circumvents this whole trap. Also worthy of mentioning is that Blue's soldiers are still alive, kind of, and they talk to Blue because, it's a kids anime. They don't want to make it seem
They've
too
become
bad.
a lot more tongue in cheek about the fact that this is a kids anime and they can't actually portray the things that they're talking about. We just saw this with Bulma's big failure. We just aired that one. And they specifically call out that they can't do that in this type of anime. And so there's a gag where his soldier pops back up and he says, "Oh, we got really wiped out." But aside from that, they all just look dead. They've got arrows lodged in their heads, and it looks like a pile of dead bodies here at the entrance to this hallway.
Right. And so Blue finds the alternative path and he's able to go down it. There's a lightning eel who tries to electrocute him, and he's able to surpass easily and continue along the way. Now, there's a couple of important things here. First of all, the circumventing of the duplicity of the pirate spirit, which is exactly what's portrayed here, right? You have the straightforward, dishonest, and let's say clever and dangerous path that is the arrow trap versus the clandestine, um, more in tune with the pirate way cave that General Blue takes and goes through and finds this eel.
I think that the eel is symbolic of the test that you would have to be able to pass to circumvent actually getting the experience of walking this path, right?
Yes, and it is to say that, I mean, Goku and Krillin would easily have passed this as well, but it does show Blue's strength of spirit here, that he's able to withstand the enlightenment of the natural forces that are exuded by the eel, and he's able to dominate and crush that, right? He is the pinnacle of the Red Ribbon Army. He is the perfect soldier. He can do those things because of how his spirit actually functions.
Well, he sees himself as above a pirate, right? He's not just a soldier.
Well, he is above a pirate, let's be honest.
He's above a
A
pirate and
Nazi
he's
a
above a soldier.
Nazi's formidability and threat level, or an authoritarian, right, is it's more than a despot. It's more than General White. He represents that ideal in the way he is. He's embodied that spirit, and by doing so, it's kind of an unholy hero sort of figure.
I think it's a nice little symbolic test of that because he has to wade out here in this water and it's watching him from inside the water and so he has to step down into the water to cross. And that's why he doesn't just go like, "Oh, I'm not going to go in
Right.
the
He has
water
to
and
he has to
go around
lower
it."
himself and subject himself to what is unknown and be enlightened by nature, which he's already able to dominate, which we
But
see
not just
here. He's just
nature, his nature, right?
yeah.
This is sort of the thing staring back up at him from underwater. This is the and also it's like a mini Leviathan. It's sort of this chaos enlightening beast that comes up and it wraps itself around him, completely encompasses him, and then hits him with that lightning. And at first it shocks him, and then it's almost like he realizes, "Oh, I've already done this with myself before, right? I have the enlightenment of what it would mean to be even more evil than a pirate is, to be even more sinister or more adversarial than a pirate could be." And so this test, it's almost like
It's not even that he's
self-reflection.
trying to be adversarial, though. It's more integrated with the spirit that he's aiming at, right? A pirate is not aiming at any kind of individual spirit. Part of being a pirate is focused on the individualism and freedom that comes with being outside of the law, right? Whereas Blue has fully embraced order and law, and he has integrated the spirit of the Red Ribbon Army fully within himself, easily able to overcome the. And that's why I think nature is what I was going with, is because it is that uh, more chaotic spirit that is embodied here and is a test for those who even find the secret passage for the pirate treasure.
I want to tie it in also to the training that the boys went through when they had to swim with the shark. And that
Yes.
idea
Yep.
of being chased by that by your own nature. And he's come to terms with what his nature is. And I think that's why he can choke the life out of this test. He holds it in his hand and stares it down, and we see that it stops affecting him when he realizes this is me testing myself. I know myself. He's in love with himself, right?
Right. Well, he's in love with beauty,
Hmm.
and he sees only beauty in himself. So let's continue. So that's Blue, and I think that's pretty much all Blue does for the rest of the episode. But we do see the Go crew continue to follow the cave, and they see a skull with a bunch of skulls with lights coming out of them. Bowman triggers the trap, and they fall towards a pit of lava. Meanwhile, they all hang on, trying to save themselves from it. And I think, does Krillin pull her pants completely off?
Not exactly. So as they fall down, Goku grabs onto the ledge, Bulma grabs onto Goku, and Krillin grabs onto Bulma. And as they're hanging there, Bulma accuses him of trying to take a peek, which he's not. He's actually hanging on for dear life. But when she says it, he then looks, sees that he can see her
I mean, he
panties,
can't help it. I
and
mean,
then of
she's
course he
pointing it
looks.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he takes a peek, and then she starts to beat him up. He panics and he says, "Come on, Goku, get me out of here. She's crazy." And he starts to pull them up, but that's not enough, and they begin to fall down into the lava. Now, I think before we get into the Noibo and what happens there, I want to look at the imagery of the light shining out of the skulls that they come across
Yes. That's important to get to.
because we're seeing another iteration of that enlightenment down here in the depths, right? We see that this is happening at the same time that Blue is coming across the eel. It kind of intercuts, but I wanted to split it up so we could be a little bit more succinct in what we're talking about. This is their it's almost like this is their version of it that's a bit more specified for them and more articulated because the light shining out of skulls is continuing the conversation that we started whenever Goku picked up a skull when they first got here and put it on his head, scared Bulma. And it's Bulma that triggers this trap by being seen by the light coming out of the skulls. I'm curious to see what you think that means that Bulma is the one that triggers that trap.
That's interesting that you frame it in that way. I was going to say that the skull motif from earlier is the realization of the actual malice held by these pirates, and that this here, these skulls that exude this light, especially since it's trapped, represent that false enlightenment that could be found by pure hedonism. And of course, it has to be Bluma to reveal that because she's the most hedonistic of all three that belong in this group. Would
Right.
you
I
agree?
would agree. I would also framing these as traps. It seems to me like it would be better to frame them as tests
Yeah.
because we see this motif often in the series, but this is sort of a test that Bulma fails.
Well, it's mostly Bulma that has trouble with these,
Right.
just to mention it.
Well, the same thing is playing out again that we just saw, which is that Bulma can't pass this test. The test being, are you able to integrate the enlightenment of that malice and also of that, I don't want to give too much away, but that adversarial feminine
Well,
spirit down here in the depths.
it is the thing because pirates don't just steal, right? It's rape, pillage, plunder. That's the pirate way. And so her inability to even still face that sexual nature that she has been developing from an earlier episode from Bulma's Big Failure, right? It's all still part of her character here.
Right. And it really helps to be able to break out and then put together the spirit of what the crew represents because A lot of this is a mirror. This has to do with Bulma's inability to progress in character. So we've got Goku here, the heroic spirit that she can lean on to be able to overcome this sort of test, even though she hasn't integrated what she needs to. And then we have Krillin with Goku, right? Almost as sort of an interplay where Krillin is that more self-aware, ego conscious sort of thing. And so I like that it frames out the way that it does, because when Bulma is seen by the enlightenment coming out of these skulls, it triggers the trap and they fall down. She grabs onto Goku to stop from falling down into the lava.
It's
And
all,
Krillin is still hanging on there
but it's
though.
that false hedonistic light, right?
Right.
Because what do people think going into this cave is that they're gonna find the treasure, and this light, this brilliant light, is reminiscent of the glitter that treasure gives off, right? It's that treasure that people seek after confronting the dragon, but this is false. And so of course it's Bloom has to uncover it.
And she's not able to integrate that enlightenment, right? And so they're hanging there above the lava, and as Krillin is hanging on to her, it plays into that same situation where we've seen Oolong's relationship to her too, right? And I think that Krillin is sort of playing filling into that same role here,
In a way, yeah, because Bluma needs someone to fill that role so that she can actually try and mature.
so that she can defend herself, right, from that tendency. And so as she's precariously dangling over the fire of the underwater mountain, you could say, um, she needs Goku to save her. She needs him to pull them up and get them out of the situation. But Goku, in and of his own strength, isn't able to save her, right? And so they fall. And the way that Goku does save them is that he takes out the Noibo and it extends all the way down to the bottom of the lava and saves them. But not without leaving Bulma with a little scarring to remember this by. Not a scarring, but it does hurt her, right?
Yeah.
Because this is her fault.
Yes.
And even if she's not going to integrate the wisdom that she's supposed to by passing this test, she can't leave unscathed, right? She can't just get away scot free
Yeah, very
when
well.
when
Yeah.
she hasn't integrated that. And so we see that here whenever they finally make it to the top, and she's angry about everything. Of course, she doesn't take any responsibility for triggering the trap, and then she touches her ass, and she's like, "Oh, ow! I got
Ooh.
burned by it."
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And so then after surpassing that trap, they are able to find the underground bay where they find the submarine. And as Blue's following them, they are set upon by a fierce pirate robot.
Well, it's interesting as they see it here because it's sneaking around, and they're Goku. I think Goku says that he senses something, but it's not human. And Bulma says, "Oh, is it a ghost?" And then they see it and they realize it's not a ghost. But I like that her intuition of what this um, is that it is a ghost,
Like a robot spirit
a spirit,
inhabiting
yeah,
this or a pirate spirit inhabiting this robot
an automaton that's animated by that spirit, right?
that is possessed. Yes. And so this pirate robot ghost attacks. And I think it's also true, like, ghost pirates is also a motif for a thing, for a reason, a thing, for a reason, let's say. And I think it's because that spirit is enduring even past the point of death. The individualized spirit, the willingness to defend one's own, which is kind of seen here with the defending nature of this robot pirate ghost. I think that's poignant to say that it is the pirate spirit, even as, and I don't like pirates. I think pirates are pretty wretched, but it is an enduring spirit. It's a liberating spirit, and it's one that has the persistence to exist even past the realm of death in which pirates normally experience.
Yeah, the motive being that is one in tune with the wisdom of the waters, and at the same time fully self-sufficient, self-serving, and able to integrate a malice. I think that here is like a congealed spirit of that is blocking their way from being able to access, um not just the treasure, but access this whole actual space that the pirates have created down here to be able to interface with the
Including
fortress.
the submarine, which seems to be a way out.
Right now, as usual, and we mentioned this, I think, in the last episode, they're committed. They need to be able to overcome this test so that they can move beyond it. This is a life or death situation, and this robot literally has a skull on its head. I don't
With a
know.
skull on its head.
I don't. I don't really want to get too deep into the design of this robot just yet, but
No,
I
I
do
think
want to.
Beware of Robot. We should save for
But I
Beware of
do want to
Robot.
point
Yeah.
out it's not insignificant that this is a robot with a huge skull for a head, that its colors and the design of its body is like a snake.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
But I think we'll have to get into that next time.
yes.
I think that kind of brings us neatly to the end of this episode.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick, concise
Took us
episode.
31 minutes.
Yeah. It's kind of, I like how they do this. You can see it whenever you break the episode down, but this was a mirror between the crew and Blue, essentially approaching the same thing and the different ways that they're able to overcome it, where we see that Blue's spirit has been developed to the point that he alone can overcome this test of enlightenment, whereas Bulma is not able to without leaning on that heroic spirit that she has internalized.
But that the heroic spirit's able to get her across without leaving her behind because Blue's Blue's fascistic spirit is able to sacrifice those subordinate to him to achieve the goal. Additionally, we do see the Noibo, the ancestral power, being able to save the crew from falling to their deaths after the light skull trap that Bluma triggers.
Right, it saves Bulma from being burned up by the fire here underwater. That enlightenment becomes the place that will just destroy her if she actually has to confront it. And so the what the power
Well,
pole is saves her from that. Yeah.
that she has to confront the true pirate spirit and what it entails to be that kind of wretched criminal.
And to understand her relationship to that, because she did not internalize it when she came into contact with it in Bulma's big failure, right?
Right, she kind of ignored it, and so it has again reared its head. So we're gonna see if she handles that later on. I'm
I do want
rooting
to,
for her. I'm cheering
yeah.
for her.
Well, I do
I
want to
hope she
point out
does.
here there's a real small symbolic thing that happens right at the end, like on the last shot, which is they're being chased here, and I got a clip of it right there. When the robot attacks, it trims some of Bulma's hair, and then it
Yes,
attacks again, and it misses. It does the same attack at Krillin, and it misses his head, and then we see a nice little shine on the top of his head. Krillin being bald, and what he represents, he's able to avoid being diminished by the attack from the robot, but Bulma, even whenever she is not struck by the attack, is diminished somewhat by
and
it.
her femininity is then reduced.
Right, her that external symbolic thing that your hair represents, which is a whole other conversation I don't want to get into right now, but that is trimmed and that is reduced. Her external expression is reduced by just interfacing with it, and she doesn't even have to be struck by it. It brings her down even by encountering it.
And so, how will Bluma survive this encounter? And will she be able to contribute to the defeat of this robot? We'll find out all these answers next episode. So be sure to tune in And if you liked what you heard, give us a subscribe, like us, watch us on Rumble, watch us on BitChute, give us a like, a subscrungle, a crumble,
Yep,
whatever it is.
click that like button. If you dislike the video, sorry. You can't really express that anymore on YouTube, so
But
if you
leave a
really don't like
comment.
it, leave a comment that you
Yeah,
don't
we'd
like it.
love to talk about it. Please give us a comment.
Yeah,
And I think that is pretty much it. I'm your host on the left, Al.
I'm your host on the right, Brock.
And we hope you guys had an enjoyable evening.